Good morning. Welcome to the Breakaway Wealth podcast. And I'm Jim Oliver, your host. And with me today is Nick Costco, all the way from Louisville, Kentucky. How's the weather in Louisville today, Nick?
It is terrible. It's we're in the middle of getting 3 or 4 inches of rain. And it's a little cold, but it feels like fall. It's good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. And also today we're welcoming our guest who actually is in Louisville, Kentucky too, Mike Gandolfo. And welcome, Mike.
I get called Matt my entire life.
Did I say Matt?
He almost did, didn't he? And that's my younger brother.
No. I just stuttered. I'm a stutterer. That's just
no. That's all right. That's all right. Listen, I am so used to being called Matt. I'm glad that I could contribute some hair to this episode. So
I am too, because we are definitely we're lacking in that area, aren't we?
Follically challenged.
Yeah. But the at least in the mornings we don't have to worry about if we look different in the morning versus in the afternoon and on a windy day. So
that's right.
Mike is in the real estate business and is very successful in the Louisville area, and he has a unique perspective on the real estate industry and breaking away using real estate and just some of the things that he's done in his life. But give us just a little background, Mike, on yourself and how you got to this point in your career.
Yeah. So, I've got the typical, hard life story, right? I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth and just basically didn't really have any wants as a kid. So I'm not very interested in that if you're talking about the guy who overcomes obstacles and challenges. But Nick and I actually ended up going to high school together, a really nice, prestigious all-boys Catholic high school here in Louisville. And that's where him and I met 27 years ago. And that community was always really special. But I found that, the education piece of the way it's taught really came really easy to me. And I didn't really have to work really hard. And I went to college basically because that was the next natural step. But, I'm probably like a lot of people who graduated with a degree that I never used. And I knew on graduation day that I was never going to use my degree. And just kind of went through that whole thing and I remember graduating from college and just feeling really lost and not knowing what I wanted to do. Luckily, I was going to get married to my high school sweetheart. She's been my rock the entire way. So even though it was a tough time in my life of figuring out what road to take, what path to take, I had her always as a foundation. So I decided to, I actually was going to go leave and become a Major League Baseball umpire. And I was signed up to go to umpiring school. And then in the meantime, I needed to do something. So I started coaching and substitute teaching. And I really enjoyed that. So I decided to go back to school and get my master's in the arts of teaching, although I never finished that. I'm really jaded against the whole education lie that's out there right now in the education process, but the value of education that's not really there. If someone wants me to talk to their kid about that they should go to college, I'm probably not the best person for them to talk to.
All right.
Just because of what's taught and what you can really go teach yourself. And really where that came from for me is I went and I actually went back to the school that Nick and I graduated from and taught for 2 years, ended up getting a head basketball coaching job and was the athletic director at another small high school here in Louisville. And basically after doing that, I was 30 years old. I had a kid on the way. I had already had one kid. I just wanted to do something else. And so I got into real estate kind of out of necessity, maybe. I was like, all right, I want to continue to coach basketball, but I don't want to be in the classroom. I can do this real estate thing. It gets slower in the wintertime. My dad was already in the real estate business, so he can kind of help cover me a little bit if I get busy and it conflicts with basketball. But I got into real estate really to coach basketball.
Wow. Nice.
And I was really fortunate to, within the first 30 days of the real estate industry, I was introduced to the concept of how to run your business by referral and not do the traditional sales techniques that are out there. And, this is a time in real estate. So this is 2006, where real estate was really kind of searching for an identity. And for all the years before, real estate professionals were the keepers of all the information. Like if they had these, and Jim probably remembers this because he's old, but they had these MLS books, right? And
I do remember
real
those.
estate agent had the MLS book, and the only way you really knew it was on the market is if you went to the real estate professional who had the MLS book. Well, 2006, we started to see online things become more and more accessible online, and really, my real estate career has kind of gone right alongside all of the influx of the artificial intelligence in the real estate business. So I like, for example, and I'm going off on a tangent. So if you have a question,
It's okay.
stop me.
Yeah.
So for example, in 2008, there was about $30 million spent by real estate agents on online lead generation and online lead generation tools. And now we're in the billions of dollars of what real estate agents spend on that. And you would think it's obvious that, if I want to go find my realtor, I go search online, and people who do that know what that's like, because you're going to inquire about a house and you're going to get about 45 phone calls and text messages and emails, and you feel like, they're just coming at you like a bunch of sharks. But the funny thing is, in 2008, when there was only about $30 million spent on online lead generation, 9% of people found their realtor online. And today, when there's billions of dollars spent, 9% of people find the realtor they use online. However, more people today are using a realtor than ever before.
So you know what that says to me, and this goes back to what I see maybe in your story of your background, is we always talk about there's two lines that people stand in their lives, and it's kind of like if we were going to a movie theater and there's two different movies playing, is you were standing in the reassuring lie line that, hey, I'm going to go back to the high school that I went to. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to have a pension. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to coach basketball, which is my passion. And that's what I have to do if I want to coach basketball. And then something happened, and you had this aha moment and this epiphany at 30 and said, wait a minute. If I owned my own business, controlled my own destiny, controlled my own calendar, I could do basketball, and all these things opened up to you. And at the same time, you started to get into the Buffini mindset of referrals and how to act differently and break out of that. And maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So 2006, the real estate market was still it was on the upswing, but it was coming down, right? So people talk about that. I got in real estate like the worst possible time. And it really started to manifest itself really clearly because, I dedicate myself. So just to be clear, I have never in my 12 years in the real estate business, I've ever closed an internet lead. Okay. Just want to make sure that that's out there. 99% of my stuff has been by referral only. And when I saw the value of really the way that my dad, before he got in the real estate business, worked for a car dealership in town. We actually were the oldest Lincoln Mercury dealership in the entire United States. And so my grandfather, my mom's father, owned the car dealership. And my grandfather had been teaching me how to work by referral his entire life, but I just didn't realize it until I started getting the real estate business. I mean, he would have people come hundreds and hundreds of miles to buy cars from his dealership because of the way that they were treated, and they were treated like family, and they weren't really necessarily sold to, but they were put in the best situation for them that they need to be in. Meanwhile, we know the car industry is full of salespeople who are just trying to get a check and do it the most profitable way possible. And if they can upsell you into something else, they're going to do it. And so it was very countercultural at that time. Well, real estate was the same thing when I got into it. And the idea of working by relationship and really serving the need of a client, and on the transactional and the emotional side, was not something that was very well, it was not very popular. It was a find them, police them, forget them kind of mindset. And in some ways it still is. It's just now it's done digitally instead of, what's that?
There's no relation. It drives to not having relationships in the transaction. Like
right.
Everything else is transactional. You're driving at the relationship so that someone wants to buy instead of being sold to.
Exactly that. And then also just the advantage that gives me on the negotiation side.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so big on that, and that's really what people want us to do, what they want to pay us to do. So, but it's that when you're talking about the two lines in the real estate world, for example, the perception does not meet the reality, and unfortunately, the reason that is because the real estate agents don't even really know what they're supposed to be doing, and so how can we expect the public to know what they're supposed to be doing? So in the reassuring lie line, which is not reassuring at all, actually, because if you go to Google and you just put realtors are in the search bar, it fills in with realtors are scumbags, overpaid. There's nothing positive that pops up on that thing at all, and which is such a shame because we're helping people until they meet you all generally make the largest investment that they make, and it's also where they are going to raise their families and where they're going to live their lives. And there's an emotional and a financial component to every real estate transactions. And the person who helps you do that should take that very seriously. Like my profession should be regarded and not look as like a necessary evil. And that's really I'm finding more and more, that's my passion, is to change that perception, have the perception meet the reality, and get real estate professionals to understand what it is they really do.
So when you look at that, Mike, and you decided or you discovered that working by relationship and referral was really the only way you were going to build your business, you came across an organization called the Buffini
Company. Yep.
Right, Buffini Company, and which is the largest coaching organization in the United States. Is that right, for small businesses?
That's what they say. Yes.
Okay. Right. Well, we have no reason to doubt.
We have no reason. The guys, they've had a huge impact on my life and several of my friends' lives. So how did that come? Just give me the 30-second version of how did you find Buffini, and really kind of tell me a little bit about your journey with Buffini and how you've risen to the top of Buffini in the organization. And I'll let you tell that a little bit.
Hey, Mike, don't leave out the details of those boxes in the early days.
All right. So
isn't it nice when you have a guy that's known you for 27 years interviewing you, because he knows where the bodies are buried, Mike?
Listen, I mean, I could sit here and the best interviews are the people who always talk about, not always just the good times, but talk about the bad times too. And because that's where the making of you really comes.
Absolutely.
So luckily the brokerage that I affiliated with after I got out of real estate school, for about 6 months, they required their new agents to take the Brian Buffini's, back then it was called 100 Days to Greatness. And ironically enough, I could tell that they weren't really fully bought into it, because the 100-day program, they only did with us for probably about 4 weeks. And then they kind of said, all right, well, you all got the gist of it, go with it. And I was like, I felt kind of cheated actually out of that whole deal. Right. So, but I at least knew I had been indoctrinated enough in the working by referral system to know that this is how I wanted to work. And so I contacted Buffini and Company. I signed up for their just basic level membership, which means we basically got a marketing kit back then every month. And so I just collected. This is what Nick's talking about. I just collected these boxes over the course of the next 12 to 18 months.
Did you open them at all? Did you get note cards out of it? Anything? Stickers?
Some of them were sent out. It just wasn't done consistently. And we all know that the secret to success is the small things done on a consistent basis. I mean, that's winning right there. It's the fundamentals done consistently over a long period of time, because anybody can be successful. It's just most people aren't willing to put in that time and get consistent and discipline. Right. So, and I'm not perfect with it now. And I know, and it still manifests a pretty good life for us. So, but it came to a point where I was collecting these boxes, and Buffini and Company does a lot of events, and they were going to, I was always the guy that's like, well, listen, I can motivate myself. I don't need to go to an event. This is kind of silly that I'm even thinking about. Well, they were doing a free event in Indianapolis. It was a one day, it was a small room, but they were basically doing it to try to get people to sign up to their bigger event in Chicago. So I enjoyed the Indianapolis event. They're pitching the Chicago event. And my sister at the time lived in Chicago, and it just happened to be that that Chicago event was over my dad's birthday weekend. So I was like, all right, we're going to go to Chicago. I'm going to get this. I'm going to sign my dad up for his birthday to go to this event. You know, back then it cost a couple $100, maybe $300. And we're going to go, and this will be his birthday present. We'll be able to spend his birthday with my sister. And it's the first Buffini Live event I went to. And I've gone to like 40 since. And it really was, back then they were called turning points. And for me, it really was a turning point. I signed on, I got a coach. Even though like financially, I did not know how that me getting a coach was going to be paid for. I've had a coach now ever since then. So it's almost been 11 years to the date that I've had a coach. And I've just really worked with this program. And once you're in the coaching, well, you get to go to all these events for free. And then my coach wanted me to go to this other event that was more on the personal, on personal development. This whole time though, I've been really diving into personal development on my own. And so I eventually paid to go to that event. And now there's another event that I've added on there, but I just kind of just kept on showing up. And I know for me, I need to go to about 3 or 4 events a year to kind of recalibrate myself. And then just to know that, because we all drift.
Right.
And Nick, with his background in the airlines industry, knows that if you're off 1 degree leaving Los Angeles on a trip to New York, you're going to like end up like 200 miles away from New York.
Hopefully in Naples. No.
So the drift is real, and I need those Buffini events and be around that group of Buffini people to kind of help just recalibrate. And so from that, just this formation of a philosophy and the way that I view the business has all come full circle, and it's been really impactful and powerful. And I love that I've got a community of people that values my opinion that I get to give back to, and that's kind of where it is now. So
and you've got small groups that you share with. You know, the one thing that you said right there that really stands out, no matter what business you're in, no matter what you're doing, is you said, I just kept showing up. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's funny that in life people have this fear, so they don't try to do anything. And you know, sometimes it's just showing up, and there's only one thing that cures fear. You know,
action.
What it is? Action cures fear, right? The magic of thinking big, David Schwartz, right?
Yep.
So now we won't go as far as G. Gordon Liddy, and for people who haven't read that book, we'll let you read the book and find out what he did to overcome his fear. But and I have the same fear, but I'm just going to still continue to be afraid of rats, and I'm going to just avoid them. How's that? So when you think of just that abundant mindset that Buffini reinforces, that your group reinforces, you know, what's the scarcity mindset in real estate for, like, from an investor standpoint, and what's the abundant mindset, and how does somebody get across that epiphany bridge to the abundant mindset?
Well, on the real estate business side of things, you know, I don't know if I want to classify it. The scarcity mindset is rampant in the realtor side. You know, they want to protect their leads. But if you're going after a lead that really is only value to you is the actual lead, and you have to follow up on 100 people just to get one, because that's the internet lead formula, and you're spending $12,000 a month to get that conversion rate, you know, you're going to have a scarcity mindset. But on my end, the abundance mindset happens because I meet a person, and I know that person, if I treat them the right way, is going to become this walking, talking billboard for what I do. And I feel better because I'm giving to them. And the natural next thing for them to do is to give back. Right. So the
law of reciprocity, right?
The law of reciprocity. And so we get, someone who we do a good job for, they want to connect us with their friends and family because it's such a different experience than what they've had. No one's going to say Mike Gandolfo's a scumbag, it is overpaid, all that other kind of stuff. All that stuff is not going to happen. You might want to say that about the real estate world, but that's not what happens when you work with a Buffini agent. So, and the power of that, by the way, Jim, that Buffini world represents about 1% of the realtors in North America, just under 1% actually. And we are a part of 1 out of every 8 real estate transactions.
Wow.
So that will tell you right there, just like the power of the abundance mindset is I'm going to help you and I'm going to give to you freely. And I know that that's going to come back to me full circle, and not necessarily because we're beating you over the head and asking you for referrals, but because that service means so much. And then we build a community within our people. As far as the investor goes, I don't know on the abundance and scarcity mindset. I think right now what we see on the best time to buy a piece of real estate would have been 20 years ago, or when you had the idea a long time ago. The next best time to buy a piece of real estate is now, right?
Right.
So because we know how things appreciate, we know all that other kind of stuff. So you can come back and you can say, well, interest rates are this or whatever. I mean, our interest rate right now historically are still extremely good, but I get it. They're higher than what they were 2-3 years ago. Okay. And they're going up. So, knowing that where you're at, the market's hot, you've got a lot of competition, but if you can find a piece of real estate that fits your criteria, it's a great time to do it, because you're going to get that appreciation in the future. You're going to have the cash flow, and it can be scary. I know to get into the real estate investor game, and you are worried about are you going to buy a money pit? But if you can find the right real estate professional who's trustworthy, who knows what they're doing, and has the team of people behind them to help you be successful, it can be a really good thing.
So go ahead, Nick.
I was gonna, you taught me something. You got to talking about through by going to the Buffini events and through the coaching there. You started talking in an uncommon way about business ownership, about being your owner operator, and we got a lot of business owners that listen to this, and you get sucked in, and you're doing the CEO, the COO, the CFO activity all at one desk. And how that can be it's first and foremost, it's unsustainable. It's maddening. It can be self-destructive. What did you do to separate those activities and have you've got a really nice life. You're peaceful. You're doing some uncommon things in that regard. What have you done there?
I'm married well. My wife just does all of it. So that's pretty much what happened. So the people who are listening to this who know me will laugh about that. So
that's why I work with her selling and buying property.
So really, the first step to that, Nick, I think, is really kind of putting your boundaries in. And this is something our profession has a very hard doing. Dr. Henry Cloud talks about in his book called Boundaries, that if you don't set your own boundaries, then someone else will, and you're not going to like it. And, that goes back to even when you respond to email, right? So if you get a seller who sends you an email at 11 o'clock at night and you happen to see it, if you respond to that email, all you're doing is giving them permission that it's okay, I work at 11 o'clock at night. Or the person who says they're 24/7. Well, I'm telling you right now, if you get a real estate agent tells you that they work 24/7, you need to turn around and run the other way, because you cannot maintain a peak state if you're on all the time. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And so you have to know that, you want the person, and realistically, no one expects anyone to be 24/7. No one would want to be 24/7 and so they don't expect that either. So I think instilling the proper boundaries, taking a day off, making sure that you have a time where your day shuts off, how you organize your day. But now it's kind of transcended into, I'm reading this book called Traction, for the second time with a group of guys in the Buffini world, and just knowing how you separate those roles out. Because if anyone's ever read the E-Myth Revisited, it starts off talking about the person who loved to bake pies, and so they open a bakery, but they don't understand that there's these other aspects to the business, and those other aspects of the business actually make that person hate baking pies. So it's tapping into your gifts, natural gifts and abilities. What are your talents? Where are you best serving your business, so that you can increase the value of your day by recognizing the activities that you need to be doing and delegating everything else.
Right.
And getting those things off your plate. Does that answer? Is that what you were thinking, Nick?
Yeah, it's good. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So, Mike, when we talk to people and we're talking about building wealth, without Wall Street, without brokers, without
without financial brokers, you want real estate brokers.
That's right, without
Okay.
financial brokers. Right. I'm sorry. Let me clarify. And
There's a
we want we want to break away from that system because you're really playing a game that somebody else is better at, and they know how to get money to flow to them instead of flow to you, and you just don't know that they're playing a different game. But in real estate, when I've looked at and I've bought real estate, now again, I'm the least handy guy in the world. My wife tried to hire a plumber to replace toilet seats, okay? So I'm just trying to give you a perspective. I don't ever worry about that because the real estate that I've bought, I've hired a great property manager for 8% to 10%, depending on how much real estate I own. And so, maybe talk about and eliminate that fear or that scarcity mindset somebody might have of, hey, I can't invest in real estate because I don't have I don't have those skills or something.
So, Jim, just going back to the plumber example,
Yeah.
You need to flip it back on Kelly and say, no, I'm hiring the plumber to replace a toilet seat because I can make 4 times as much in that hour than what I'm paying that plumber, right? That's what you got to go back.
Hey, it's funny you say that because I tell everybody that I don't mow my lawn. I don't do those things because I know that if I want to work, which I consider mowing my lawn working, then I can make a lot more money doing what I do than mowing my lawn. Now, some people, we won't.
And somebody's better at it too, right?
Huh?
Give it to somebody who's better at it too.
That's right. And I'm not very good at it. Being straight and getting straight lines on my yard. Now, does it bother me that the guys that are mowing my lawn are there about 15 minutes because they've got 3 stand-up mowers that are cruising around there at 30 miles an hour, it seems like? No, it doesn't. Sometimes it does bother me, but I negotiate a pretty good deal. My yard guy, by the way, I pay him annually. Guess when I pay him?
When?
December.
There you go.
You know why? Because he's starving in December.
Yeah, he is.
And I'm getting a good deal.
But what you're just talking about there, I think really is the scarcity and abundance mindset and property management. So if you find a good property manager, and I'm not going to talk about what they should be paid because I think the law kind of prohibits that, but a good property management manager is going to be able to justify their value. And it's the same thing you just talked about. You can try to do this and save whatever percentage you're paying a property manager, but A, is that the highest and best use of your time? Do you have the talent and the tools to be able to do it at as high of a level as what they're going to be able to do it, and to provide the experience for the tenants or for you as the investor that you would be able to do? So, everyone has the right to sell their house for sale by owner, to do their own taxes, to use E-Trade and invest in whatever, they can all do that on their own. But a true professional is always going to be worth what they're paid, and they can justify that based off, hey, this is how you've been going about it. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's use my team of people. Let's look at, what I have available so that you can free up the time and go do the things that you need to do to help either increase the value to your day or increase the value of your life. I could think about property management. The time that the normal person spends on property management could be time that they're spending with their kids, could be time that they're spending at work with their spouse, whatever else. And really if you're not equipped to do it, you're just going to make a lot of mistakes. So that scarcity mindset of, hey, I want to try to manage this myself, it's something you really need to think about and then try to find the right person. And if you need help, we can actually help you find those people and connect you with a Buffini agent in your market.
That's what I was just going to say. One of the things that I've been impressed with the Buffini organization and the Buffini agents that I've talked to, primarily starting with you, is that you've referred me to a couple of professionals at other places, other locations in the United States, and they've always been great. I think you've referred me 2 or 3 people that are part of the White Hat organization with Buffini, and they've been outstanding. When you think about breaking away financially, and now we kind of move to current day, and profit first, and that whole concept. Maybe talk a little bit about how that's impacted your practice management?
So Profit First, if people aren't familiar with that book, it's a awesome, by the way, people think about a financial book. It's actually a really good Audible listen. If you want to, it might even be better an Audible than it is reading it. So, and there's not a lot of financial books that you can say that about, but Mike Michalowicz is very entertaining and throughout the whole thing. But he talks about what's the, in the accounting world, it's GAAP, right? The general accepted accountable principles or whatever else.
Yep.
And it's generally accepted, just like the way that we look at money is generally accepted, or the people that look at real estate is generally accepted. Well, the reality is that generally accepted is broken.
Nelson says the majority's never been right about anything.
Exactly, right? Majority's going to, if you follow the herd, you're going to end up fat, sick,
Slaughtered,
poor, whatever else, and making someone else a lot of money. But if you're willing to go against this, swim upstream and think about things a little bit differently, then you can put yourself in a really good situation. And this is where Mike Michalowicz in his book Profit First wants you to flip the switch. Instead of looking at your revenue minus your operating expenses minus your taxes, and that equals your profit. What happens if you had your revenue and you went ahead and said, no, I'm here because I'm in business and I'm going to go ahead and take my profit out first, hence the name Profit First. And I'm going to take 10% or whatever your profit margin is, I'm taking that out first. And then I'm going to take out money from my taxes. And then I'm going to take out money from my compensation, because I'm sure that being in the small business realm, we meet a lot of small business owners who are not paying themselves, right? And then whatever's left over, that's how much money I have to operate my business. And this, you all talk about the Parkinson's law all the time, right? We're going to use what's available to us. Well, if we think about what's available to us like a tube of toothpaste, and the first squeeze out of that tube of toothpaste is using operating expenses, well, you're going to squeeze that tube of toothpaste and use that money. And so at the end of the day, there's not that owner's compensation. There's not that profit. For some people, April 15th is a surprise every year, and there's not even the money for taxes. Show me a small business owner who hasn't had tax problems, and I'll show you a small business owner who hasn't been in business very long.
What's April 15th, Mike?
That's tax day.
Oh, actually, I thought that was October 15th. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well,
maybe
for us, we follow extensions. That's right, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
We must be on a different schedule.
No, I'm doing October 15th too. But the normal person thinks of April 15th, right? Oh. So but now if you go ahead and you take all that stuff out first and you plan for all that stuff, I'm taking out my profit, I'm taking out my compensation, I'm taking out money for my taxes. And now what I have left over for operating expenses is the end of the roll of toothpaste. Well, we've all had that roll of toothpaste that's towards the end, and we've been able to make that thing last for weeks and weeks and weeks just because we have to be a little bit more intentional. Right. And the whole Profit First thing is about making you get to that point where you have to be a little bit more intentional with your operating expenses, and knowing that you've already taken out your compensation, you've already taken out your profit, you've already got your money for your taxes. And so the stress level from that is that takes away too is really impactful.
Nick, that reminds me of a book. Go ahead. What book would we say that would relate to in somebody's just their personal or their family's life? I was thinking of The Richest Man in Babylon.
Another, by the way, Brian Buffini will tell people about that book so much so that the bookstores where he was speaking would stock The Richest Man in Babylon in the bookstores, knowing that people would hear him talk about it. Wow. And then they would come to the bookstore looking for The Richest Man in Babylon. And that book is exactly right. Like if you read The Richest Man in Babylon and Profit First, they're gonna have a lot of the same. One's gonna be, ancient times. Right. And one's going to be a little more relevant to today, but it's the same principles, because principles don't change, tactics do. And those principles are about paying yourself first are always going to be a key to success.
So one of the things that we talk about, we talk about the financial problems, the interest that you're paying other people, which you've been really responsible. And I know you're not shy about that per se, but hey, you guys have not been a debt family. Chrissy, both of you all have had good practices like that, but what you were experiencing was that lost opportunity cost of paying cash. Right. And here we had talked about infinite banking and taking control of your finances for a number of years, but it just wasn't clicking. And when you read Profit First and started thinking kind of along those lines, that's what I heard from you is you kind of put some things together about how you could solve the lost opportunity cost, leverage those dollars for, really generations to come, and maximize those dollars to be able to put back to work for your family and for your business.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, specifically, like, so if you look at the profit first mindset, you've got these buckets that you're supposed to put money into. So all the money, all the revenue comes in one bucket, and then it gets dispersed out to these four other buckets. Like I said, goes first to the profit bucket, then to the tax bucket, owner's compensation bucket, and then to the operating expense bucket. And so my compensation bucket and my operating expense bucket has to be fairly accessible. I got to be able to write checks and pay people and all that other stuff. However, I know that if the profit bucket and the tax bucket are too accessible, well, then bad times, slow times come around, and all of a sudden you want to dip into those things. You're going to pay it back. I mean, you're obviously going to pay it back, right? I mean, we're going to pay it back, but you're basically knowing that the temptation of having those two accounts be accessible. They need to be accessible, but they can't be like, I can just go online and transfer money accessible, right? So I immediately thought of like, okay, this is Mike Michalowicz doesn't talk about this part. This is me taking this to the next level. It's like, all right, well, I want to use the infinite banking system for my profit bucket and for my tax bucket. And the funny thing is the way that Mike talks about these two buckets, the infinite banking system, especially in the beginning, really sets up really well because, I, for example, when I put a dollar into my banking system, I don't have a dollar that I have access to right now because we're not efficient yet. But that helps me because I now know that if I got 60% that I can use for my taxes, well, the other 40% is my profit, and it just helps me. I can't touch it, and it helps that build just the way that it needs to build. And then as we go on further and further, the amount of money that's available to us, and by putting that money into motion and by letting it grow and knowing all the good things that we can do with that, it's really empowering. I mean, ideally we get to a point one day where we're running the majority of our banking, of our operating expenses through our banking system, and making it really work for us, because then it's a debt that our business has to pay back to ourselves. And it's just this, when you control the money, you control the game, and it just helps us really kind of grow in more ways. It creates another revenue stream. So
when you think of that and you think of buying real estate and combining the infinite banking concept and investing in real estate, the one thing that I noticed that happens actually sooner than you would think is the revenue that you have flowing back into your banking system. It starts to come back faster than you think it is, which grows your banking system. You have to build more room for it. And, what really works well is, if you think about what our goal is our goal is to have passive income coming in that exceeds our ideal standard of living. And,
yeah,
right.
I love like the traditional way to look at retirement is I want to put myself in a tax deferred account. And I always thought about that. I was like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. Why would I want to pay taxes later on?
Right.
Why would I want to pay tax? Like, I don't think my taxes are going down. I think they're going up.
Yeah. You don't want to retire poor.
I know, for example, for a fact that being taxed on a dollar today is going to be completely different than being taxed, even at the same percentage, than a dollar later on in life.
Right.
And, so the argument is, well, you're going to be at a lower tax bracket. You're not going to be making as much money. It's like, well, that sounds terrible. Like, why am I working so hard later on? I am not doing it right for sure if I'm making less money when I want to retire. Like, I want to retire and like not have any worries in the world. Like, I want to be able to go when you retire, which I don't know if will ever really happen. I always talk about in terms of like, someday I want to be able to go live in Italy for 3 months. If I want to go live in Italy for 3 months, I've got the resources to do that. And whether or not I ever truly retire, I don't ever see that happening. I think I'll always kind of.
Well, do you know what the definition of retirement is?
What?
To take out of service. You're going to be taken out of service?
Well, absolutely. You're exactly right. We see that in the horse industry here all the time. So
yeah, exactly. It's not a good thing when they take you out of service, right?
Don't want to go to the glue factory.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we look at Create Tailwind is really when we're coaching somebody is we're trying to get them to where they have choices, right? We have to have our money flowing to us, and the more money we have gives us choices, which gives us freedom. And we don't really want to retire to where we don't want to be of service, because we might find something that we want to do. And more often than not, it's profitable, right? Owning real estate, owning businesses, whatever it is. And, but what we want is, we want to do what we want to do when we want to do it. Like you said, I want to go to Italy. Well, the infinite banking system is the way. It's your money pool that you control. It's your bank. But one of the things you said about profit first is, everybody that's sitting there in the audience today, if you don't own a business, just think of your family, because your family is a small business. And you may work for a big company and get a paycheck, but you run your family, or you should, like a business, which means you should have profit first, which means you should pay yourself first, right?
Absolutely. I mean, more so than that, like my family likes to go on adventures. Like, we like to go explore. Well, that's not, you can do it you can go to a national park and have a great experience. Don't get me wrong, and do it cheaper.
Right.
But it's still, no matter what, it's going to take money. And if I'm just working and we're just making ends meet and whatever else, and I'm missing out on it. I have a kid in high school and a kid in 6th grade, and I'm quickly realizing that, everyone talks about how fast it goes, and you really don't have that much time with your kids to really do these things. I'm getting to the point where I'm realizing how much little time we have. And I don't want to spend that time where they think, oh, dad's always working, so that we can have, Catholic schools and all this other stuff. I want us to be able to go do some adventures. I want us to be able to go out and really live life and have a quality of life that's really important. So
what if you could teach them never to have to go into a commercial bank the rest of their lives?
That would be, they have a purpose, but at least where they don't have to go in a commercial bank and ask for a loan. Where the commercial bank is just a person that's just kind of helping transition money from, it's a vehicle more than it is a growth opportunity or
All
debt.
right, Mike, hey, we gotta start putting a bow on this. But so you have been really instrumental in introducing to me a lot of books and kind of unlocking that in me.
People in Kentucky can read. I just want to put that out there. See,
I know that it's a little cliche to say, hey, what are your favorite books? But what I want to know is, what's the top 3 books that you give away?
Well, The Go-Giver is the #1 book that I gave away, and so much so I've given it to both of you all, I think, and now you all give it away to people. That has been I just ordered 16 copies yesterday, and I continually, I've probably given out close to 100 copies of The Go-Giver. Yep. So Bob Berg, you can send me my residual check whenever you want. The other one that I'm getting ready to give away, Nick's going to get one, he doesn't even know it, is Andy Andrews' The Little Things. I'm just, it's a really good perspective on what are the little things that you should sweat, that you should sweat, the little things that kind of go into, and from that conversation came the idea that you want to compete at a level where your competition doesn't realize the game's being played. Yep. And that's probably #2. When people try to come to me and they try to get into a personal development routine, this has been the greatest gift this entire journey has given to me, is when I went into business for myself, I had to quickly learn, like Jim Rohn says, I need to go to work on myself if I really want to become my best version of who I want to be. And a great book to help people start off with that is called The Miracle Morning. Don't get The Miracle Morning for whatever, just get the original Miracle Morning book. That book has been really instrumental just to getting those daily routines of what you're doing. So that's probably the next one that I'd probably refer out the most. I do that a lot, though, like Nick says. So
well, I appreciate that. Go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna go ahead, Nick.
Here's the thing. Obviously we teach about driving towards financial independence. We teach out of a book. Our mentor, our friend, Nelson Nash, who you've had the opportunity to meet and talk with a little bit. He was our first guest on this podcast. And I know that your wife has read it a couple times, and I know you've stolen a couple more copies from me here recently, is Becoming Your Own Banker. And
Sure.
the one thing that we always offer on here is the opportunity to get a free copy. If you go to our website, createtailwind.com, up in the top right, it says schedule a webinar. And all we're doing is teaching. We'll give you an overview of that book and mail you a free copy. So that's just I know that you have that in your library at your office for people to check out, and we appreciate you having that in there for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually need to get the one for the accountant from Laura, because I know my accountant was asking about that the other day. She didn't shy away from it. She's like, yeah, let's figure out what we're doing. Let's how to maximize. I was like, all right. That's how you know you have the right people. My banker at the commercial bank was like all about the profit first and all about us doing the IBC thing. And then the accountant was on too. So
I always tell people accountants either love IBC or they hate it, and the accountants that love it are innovative and creative, and they are trying to help you grow. The accountants that hate it are they like to fill out forms, and they're very black and white of here's how you fill out the form. But wrapping this up, Mike, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights into not only Buffini but Abundance. Profit First, all the information, great information. And if anyone in the audience grabs those books, reads those books, they're going to be way ahead by reading the books that Mike has mentioned and that he refers. The book that we would say is the textbook, the best book still written about infinite banking out of any of the books out there it's a must read if you want to be your own banker, is Infinite Bank, How to Become Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. But thank you for everybody for joining us. Nick, thank you as always for co-hosting, and have a great day, guys. And we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
all right. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.